Hi everyone, thank you for joining us for our 2020 virtual livestock show. We are here with Andrew Weaver. He works at NC State and he is the small ruminant extension specialist there. And he has been our judge for several years, and we are happy to have him back and that he is flexible with this virtual show. And I'm going to turn it over to him.
Go on to the cattle show. We'll save pigs for last. See our first class of heifers. We have two classes of heifers. Our first class of heifers are our March to June born yearlings. 4 heifers in this class, and I think a nice group here. I'm going to go ahead and start off with this Red Angus heifer. I think this individual is one that just puts the most good pieces together for me in terms of structural build, in terms of balance, in terms of one that looks like a female and has some of those feminine qualities, but at the same time has some muscle mass and dimension to her. I think this one checks all those boxes, and one for me that I think I'm pretty comfortable with winning this class. She's one that like I said, you set this one in motion and she gets out and goes all right. She balances up. She has plenty of body and softness through the center portion of her rib. She's one that's moderate in her frame size. I think she's just a nice functional heifer here to win the class, and one that combines, some of that extension and feminine qualities with a little bit of muscle mass and shape to her as well. We come back and our second place individual in that class is going to be this black heifer here. This is one, I think, a great cow prospect. She's long bodied, she's extended, she's good up through her front 1/3. I think she's got a lot of potential as a cow down the road. Maybe one for me that just isn't maybe quite as shapely. She's not quite as soft through the center portion of her body. She's certainly going to be a bigger cow on down the road than the Red Angus heifer that's going to win the class. And then in third, between third and fourth, I think there's some trade-offs here. For third here, I'm going to go with this black heifer here. I think from the side, this is one that balances up nicely. She's got some depth of body. She's one that's fairly functional, and she has this right here. She's certainly one, though, that I would like to open up in terms of her rib cage. She's one that when you get in behind this one, as she steps away here in the video, you'll see she's one that we certainly want to mass up, to widen up. When you get behind her, she's one that needs to be bigger in her pin set, wider tracking, be more shapely and more dimensional when you get in behind. But one that off on the side, she's one that balances up nicely and ties in probably better than our heifer that's going to round out the class in terms of her neck set and where her neck ties into her shoulder. We round out the class with another red heifer, and one that for me just in terms of balance and build is just a little bit more concerning. And especially if they're in her front 1/3, I'd like to maybe lay her in a little bit smoother at her shoulder, tie her neck in higher on the top side of her shoulder, clean her up a little bit there right in her brisket and her chest floor. She's one that probably needs to be a little bit softer and deeper right in the center portion of her rib. But I think a very functional individual. She's one that probably has a little bit more foot and bone than our heifer in third. She's probably got a little bit more muscle mass as well than our heifer in third. One for me today that, like I said, we just need to balance that one up a little bit better to move her up higher in class. So that was our first class of heifers. And then we find the next one. Interesting class, and there's a lot of differences here between these heifers, some give and take. I thought this roan heifer just kind of combined, some different interesting traits. She's one that's big-footed and big-boned, one that has some rib shape and volume to her. This is one that I would certainly like to pick her up in her pin set, level her out through her hip. And I think that would just help her square her up out of her hip quite a bit. But a heifer that gets out and goes all right. She's clean enough through her front 1/3. She has, I think, just more rib capacity and shape than maybe some of the others in the class. We move on to this next heifer, and I think this is kind of an interesting one as well, and certainly one that's probably on the greener side and can certainly use a little bit more condition and has some potential on down the road, but one that is certainly fancy. And at the same time, she combines that with a big hip and pin set, plenty of foot and bone, and feminine up through the front 1/3 of her body. A heifer that balances up nicely. One that I think if this one was a little bit more mature and had a little bit more condition to her and a little bit further down the road, might be able to move up in this class. In terms of our 3rd place heifer, this one is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of stage of maturity and condition. Turn off the volume here. This is a heifer that probably is a little bit too far along in terms of her level of condition. Probably has a little bit too much on her, especially for her size and her age. This is one I'm a little bit concerned about in terms of longevity and how big this one's going to get, and how much future this one has in it. Because this one's carrying an awful lot of condition for its size, but a heifer that I think has some mass to her, certainly has some rib shape and depth of body to her. And for those reasons, I think she kind of fits in that 3rd hole. But one that I'd like to clean up there in her brisket, stretch her out through her front end, and just peel her down in terms of that condition, and freshen that one up. We come down to our heifer here in 4th. Should I get the right video? And another heifer that, this one in probably a little bit greener as well. Going back to maybe that heifer, similar in condition to that heifer that was there in 2nd. One that we just need to mass up and make more shapely. I think this one's just a little bit plainer in terms of its kind, a little bit flatter in terms of its muscle shape. One that we just need to open up to maybe move up in the class today. But a heifer that's got some body to her, that's a functional cow prospect, and a nice heifer for this young man. And then we're going to round out the class with this heifer here, kind of a fancy little heifer, but one that just needs more condition on her today. This one needs a little bit more time on feed and time to progress and develop some of that muscle shape and volume and cover on her. She's one that's just awfully green today. One that's a little bit concerning in terms of her track, and you set that one in motion and she gets pretty narrow. And so I'd just like to open that one up, widen her up, and just add a little bit more flesh to her to move her up any higher today. So then in terms of, bringing back, our 1st place and our 2nd places in those classes in consideration for our grand champion heifer and our reserve champion heifer. And I think the one that just does the most right things for me today is going to be our red heifer out of the 1st class. So that's going to be this young man's heifer here. Just a really nice heifer that's built structurally well and balances up nice. She's got plenty of body to her and capacity and rib shape. She's one that's fancy up through her front 1/3, and at the same time has a little bit of muscle mass and shape and dimension to her. One that a very nice heifer, I think, to win this. And then we come back for reserve in our 2nd class, which is this roan heifer. And I think today I'm just going to go ahead and use this roan heifer. I think she's one that has some foot and bone to her, has some body capacity and shape to her. Like I said, she does need to be better in terms of her pin set. She needs to be square and leveler out of her hip. But I think she's good enough in the other areas. She's nice enough through her front end. She has that softness and some body and rib shape to her. And then she stands on plenty of foot and bone. She's going to be your reserve, but I think